Well, good evening and welcome back to Wednesday Night Live. Glad to have you aboard. As you notice, I'm wearing, I'm back into my long sleeve Pendletons because we've had our usual Pocatello weather here. Last week we had two different incidents, I think, of snow, just overnight snow, colder than son of a gun though, wet snow. And then last night we had some. We're in due for some more. So the last show you saw me on, I was in short sleeves. It was a beautiful day, almost 60 degrees. And right now it's closing in on 40. So just wait a few minutes, as they say, and things will change. Well, we're glad to have you back. We look forward to our time with you every week. I hope I'm bringing you information you find useful. You know, the thrust of my conversations over the last year or so have been more and more toward telling you and trying to educate you about the hazards, if you will, the horrors of our nation becoming Islamicized. And it's happening. It's happening. The Saudis, who are Wahhabists. Now, that, if you've watched any of my shows in the past, I've explained a little bit about Wahhabism is the extreme fundamental form of Islam. And Saudi Arabia is ruled by the Wahhabis. There's a working relationship between the Saudi king and his heirs and the Wahhabists clerics. And it's an interesting, strange bedfellows kind of thing. But it works for the Saudis because the Saudis let the Wahhabis run the religion of the nation, which basically is the nation, and the Saudis get to have all the money. And so as long as the Saudis stay in line and leave the Wahhabis alone, the Wahhabis don't try to dethrone the Saudis. It's Islam is it's fascinating. Rather like looking at a viper that you know if it strikes you, you're dead, and yet you can't take your eyes off it. Very, very much like that. But before I go overboard and get into my teaching mode, please forgive me. And allow me, if I may, once again to remind you about Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. I tell you about them every week. I'm not going to stop telling you about them because they need your help. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a Christ-centered, and let me just read their statement. I keep trying to memorize it. I haven't made it so far. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a Christ-centered nonprofit ministry offering life-affirming alternatives to abortion and compassionate care to those who face pregnancy and abortion-related issues. It's pretty succinct. It makes the point. They are the antithesis of everything Planned Parenthood and their murderous affiliates. This is about life, but they are so small, they need your help. Won't you please call them at area code 208, as I've mentioned to those of you who live out of state. The whole state of Idaho at this time has only one area code, 208. The number is 478-HOPE. Won't you call them and see what you can do to give somebody some hope, show some compassion, and bring hope to an expectant mother. Might be, as we used to say back in the day, a young mother who's in trouble, or a young to-be mother who's in trouble. It could be any number of things, but the folks at Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center bring a Christ heart to what they do. But they need your help. Call them, please, 478-HOPE. They can use your financial help, and there are other things that you can do to help them also. They are very definitely on a shoestring operation. They need your help. God bless you. God will bless you, and you're going to feel good about whatever you do. And even if it's just, my wife and I try to make a monthly contribution. It's not big. We don't have a lot of money, but it's consistent. And you can do the same thing. It doesn't have to be a lot. If it's consistent, it gives them an idea of how to plan for the future. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, 478-HOPE. God bless you. Thank you very much. I also want to remind you, we covered it a little bit last week. This Thursday, the 31st, March the 31st, at the Red Lion Inn at 6:30 p.m. will be the kickoff for Jason West, Dr. Jason West's campaign for legislative seat. I think it's 28B, and it's not on his flyer here. It doesn't really have to be. It's just he's contesting Kelly Packer. Kelly Packer has gone way by her use-by date. We need to get her out of there. She has been consistently less than honest, truthful, and transparent with the truth. She and a number of her friends in the legislature are really going out of their way to destroy Dr. Hope, his business. He is a local doctor of chiropractic medicine. He also does naturopathic medicine. He has been doing this for many years, and he has helped a lot of people. And he's not alone. He is just the fellow who has finally said, you know, I can't let them just destroy my business without speaking up. So he has had the temerity, if you will, to speak up against Kelly Packer. And boy, that's when she unloaded the dump truck. She is really trying to bury him in baloney and basically destroy the industry. Interesting, it's kind of as a sideline, shows you how people can get things distorted and confused. Martin Hackworth, you remember Dr. Hackworth was a physics, I think it was physics professor at ISJ, very outspoken, very liberal, progressive. He has a much better opinion of himself than I have of him, but he once in a while, even if it's only by accident, hits things on the head and he makes some sense. Other times he goes off into la-la land. And I bring it up in context here because he wrote an article that was in the Idaho State Journal for Sunday, March 20th. And it's called What's the Truth? And he's talking about basically about the baloney going up at ISU and the new medical school, which will be a for-profit medical school. It's going to be in Boise, but it is part of Idaho State University. Well, now how does that help us here? And I give Dr. Hackworth credit because he points that out. How does that help us here? We have here at Idaho State University, we are fortunate to have one of the foremost health sciences in the nation. A very small university here, but one of the foremost health sciences curricula, or whatever the proper term is, in the whole nation. And it just seems reasonable that they would have had that school here. Pardon me, we're still trying to kick whatever it is that's going around, so bear with me. But every once in a while, Hackworth will say something that, for lack of a better term, hacks me. His big complaint, among others, with the school is that it's a DO school, Doctors of Osteopathy, which he likens to bone crunchers or something like that, and gives them no credit. He doesn't feel that DOs should have the same credibility as MDs. And I find that interesting because it shows his ignorance in this area. There are other areas in which he's quite enlightened. This is not one of them. If you you can do this yourself. Go to the web, go to Google, and Google Doctor of Osteopathy or Osteopathic Medicine, and find out what DOs have to go through to become DOs. Now, it's a very interesting thing. I asked my father-in-law many years ago, who was a DO, as were two of my wife's uncles were also DOs. I asked him, what's the difference between DOs and MDs? And his tongue-in-cheek answer was basically, Ralph, it's like two unions fighting for the same people, you know. I didn't pursue it. It didn't mean a lot to me at the time. But if you go to the web, go to the websites for, go to Wikipedia, look up Doctor of Osteopathy, you will find something quite revealing. Number one, Doctor of Osteopathy has to go through the same medical training as an MD. Now, a lot of people don't know that, and the MDs don't like to hear it. The MDs have this exclusive little club of theirs. They don't want any DOs in their club, but they have the same training. They have to get the same science courses. They have to do the same. They have to do the same rotations. If they specialize, they have to do the same residencies. DOs tend to be more in general practice or family practice. There are more women getting into the DO field, and unlike that super club of MDs, that I went to Harvard, I went to Yale, you're just a DO. The DO schools will accept people from other scholastic endeavors. You don't have to have been a science major, for instance. You will certainly have to do those courses to get into the school, but you can change careers. Medical doctors don't take that. They're above that sort of thing. However, the curricular requirements are the same. The state board requirements are the same. If you want to become licensed in this or any other state as a DO, a doctor of osteopathic medicine, you have to pass the same test as the MDs. What the MDs don't like to talk about, they like to look down their nose at it, but what they don't like to talk about is the fact that the DO has to go beyond because of their association in musculoskeletal and nervous part of the body. They have to go another 300 to 500 hours beyond what the MD does to get their license. So in essence, the DO is better prepared certainly not just my opinion, you can look it up for yourself, then the MD. But they don't belong to that exclusive little club. Things are changing. Not everybody is as ignorant of it as Dr. Hackworth is, but people are realizing that DOs have the exact same training as MDs. Matter of fact, when I have the opportunity, when I have to have a doctor, a family physician, whatever, I will always opt for the DO because they believe that the body is not only God's gift, but that it has its own natural healing properties if you allow it, and that medicine is part of that, but it's not medicine like hacking and cutting. It isn't the end all to everything. The surgeon who is scheduled to work on my hand in several weeks is a DO, and I specifically asked for a DO. Not that I don't look down my nose at MDs. It's all the field of medicine. What I do look down my nose at is stupidity, the kind of stupidity that goes into name calling. You say, "Oh, you're not one of them, or you're one of us," or whatever. So, and I kind of got off on a tangent because that's kind of what they're trying to do to Dr. West, Jason West, and other people who are practitioners of chiropractic medicine and naturopathic supplemental medicine, if you will. They are determined to, and Kelly Packer, let me remind you as I did last week, she's the one who tried to pass a bill that would require bake sales to, bake sales to be licensed. And as I shared with you, my wife for years has made pies for the auctions for the Reagan-Lincoln Day dinners, and they always bring a nice piece of money because she makes good pies and people like them. Well, if she wanted to continue doing that for the Lincoln-Reagan or Reagan-Lincoln, however it is, she would have to, if that bill had passed, she would have to have her kitchen licensed and get a state permit to bake pies for a bake sale. Come on. Kelly Packer is also the one who attempted to pass the law that requires anybody using sign language as interpretive to have a license for that. And the law was so restrictive, as I understand it, that if you, as a parent, have a child who is deaf-mute and you speak to them with sign language, technically you would have to be licensed in order to interpret for your child if you say you had to go to the hospital. I mean, how crazy is that? Now, I understand, I can see a use to that licensing for a court interpreter where they're interpreting law. I saw this when I was in California, when I was in Leo in California, where we had very often Chinese speaking, which there are many, Mandarin and Cantonese are the two majors, but they have many dialects of Chinese. Spanish speaking, to a lesser degree Korean speaking. Those who were interpreters there did have to be licensed by the state because they had to basically be licensed by the AMA or whatever their equivalent is in the state to make sure that they understood the nuances to giving legal testimony. That part I understand, but when it gets to the point where you can't even interpret for your child in the emergency room, something wrong with that one. Big time wrong. One of Kelly Packer's big ones. Kelly Packer has been very, very supportive of the state exchange, the Obamacare exchange. She would like to see more Medicare, not in a way that's of real value to us, just because she likes that federal money. So Kelly Packer, she ain't my gal, and I'm not going to dance with the one that brung her, or whatever that is. Jason West, however, has had the courage to step forward and say, you know what, enough is too much. And so please put this on your calendar. It's this Thursday night, 6:30, at the Red Lion Inn, entry free. In fact, the first 200 people who show up will receive a little carry bag or whatever with some goodies in it, just as kind of an incentive to come there. Now, I know, I guess I should give this disclaimer, the West family are friends with my family. We know his mother very well. She's a very dear lady that we love dearly. We have come over the last 2 or 3 years to know Jason. He's a decent man. He's a hard-working guy, honest to a fault, and he really doesn't deserve the kind of treatment Kelly Packer and she's bought and paid for by the insurance industry. So you can trust her all the way to the door. Just make sure that you're watching her. She was the one, among other things, when we were having the big hoopla about the so-called non-discrimination ordinance, and when the homosexual community was steamrolling everybody in the state, to get this ordinance passed as much as they could. Kelly Packer sided with them against the more conservative point of people who said, you know what, bad law is bad law. We don't want this. And so she sided with the homosexuals and their cabal, if you will, against the rest of us, those of us who didn't want that bill. And it had, other than the vehicle of being for the homosexuals, the whole idea was that, once again, it's bad law. And it's still bad law, even though it's on the books. Well, when she was confronted by her local Republican constituency, she lied and denied. She said, I opposed that. She didn't understand that she had been interviewed, I think it was in Tacoma or Spokane, by a newspaper up there, and they had quoted her word for word, and she was very supportive of it. So, and I'm sure that the homosexual community knows that, and I'm sure that they will be supporting her against Dr. West. But anyway, the campaign kickoff is this Thursday at the Red Lion Inn, the 31st of March at 6:30 p.m. Be there or be square, as they used to say in old-time radio. And I'll look forward to seeing you. We're going to try to get caught up on news items that we're kind of behind on this. Part of it because both my wife and I have been fighting whatever it is that's going, I guess it's going around the country. I talked to my good friend, my former patrol partner, who is, we're still very close friends. He's in Southern California. I talked to him the other day, and they've been having it down there. And he said it's kicking their butts down there. It's 4 or 5 weeks, which is what it's been here. My wife and I are just about recovered from it. But my goodness, it's been a long haul. And if you've had to go through this, I don't have to tell you. It's been interesting. But anyway, with that, of course, I've had to postpone my surgery now several times, and it has thrown me behind because I simply couldn't come into the studio several times. I just couldn't make it. And so we had a lot of, I had some stuff that was, we call it canned in this industry, and it's educational, and it would be speaking as I am, except that I couldn't be here. So we're trying to get caught up now with our live presentation. So bear with me. Some of this may be old news, but we're going to, I'm not politically correct, as you well know. Speaking of politically incorrect, now, if you're following the news, and oh my word, I'm sure that you're just as disgusted with it as I am. This whole thing, and now what has happened is Sleazy Donald, as he has recently been named, and I think that pretty much covers him. Sleazy Donald, somebody, not him. Oh no, not Sleazy Donald. He wouldn't do this. But somebody has gone out there and they've got it in. There's an article now. Apparently, it's on the stands now. I've got to look for it in the Inquirer. Now, the Inquirer. If they say it, it's true. From space aliens to Spud Nut Donuts, it's true. And they're saying that Ted Cruz is basically a playboy. He's a player, a philanderer, a cheat. Supposedly he's had 5 affairs since he's been married to Heidi. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge I can sell you that doesn't go to anywhere, and I'll charge a premium for it. I was listening to Glenn Beck as I was coming in for the program tonight, and he was making a good point. He said, "Are you kidding me? He got lucky with Heidi. I mean, she's a nice-looking lady, a decent lady. This guy is not a player. I mean, he doesn't fit he's not a Bill Clinton. He's not a Donald Trump. Hey, Donald Trump's a player. He's on his 3rd or 4th wife. This wife, and this isn't something that was just hearsay. You can look this up. She posed nude for I don't remember if it was Playboy or one of those sleaze type magazines, and maybe that's why he's got her as his latest trophy. I don't know, but if anybody's going to throw stones at glass houses, it should not be Sleazy Donald. But that being said, now there's this campaign by these, what do they call these, super PACs or whatever they are, and they're going after Ted Cruz. It's interesting to watch this because the Republican establishment hates Trump. They're scared to death of them, really, and they hate Cruz, but they're 2 different people, 2 different animals, whatever you want to. Trump is a big mouth, narcissist, egotistical, self-centered, self-aggrandizing, showboating carnival barker. Those are his strong points. Whatever he's doing, it's about cutting the deal, with his usual, these hand signs that he does it. I just marvel when I see him talking. Now, I come from a predominantly Italian family, and we don't even use those hand signs, so I don't know what he's doing. I say predominantly because actually I'm Irish, but I was raised in an Italian household. That's for another time. But I learned to talk with my hands, and whatever language he's speaking, maybe it's Dutch. He is of Dutch heritage. Maybe it's Dutch. I've never seen anybody with these hands gestures except at the carnival. You see them all the time. So Sleazy Donald's guys, they're one side. Now, Ted Cruz is a different animal. This is a man who has appeared to plead cases before the Supreme Court, and don't hold me to these numbers, but they're close. It's either 7 times or 9 times. Most attorneys, if they're even good, if they're proficient, will be lucky if they even get one chance before the Supreme Court in their entire, if they even get a chance before a circuit court. That's big stuff. He has been before the Supreme Court either 7 or 9 times, and he's won all but 2 of the cases that he's brought before the Supreme Court. In other words, this is a man who knows constitutional law. Not like Barack Hussein, who is supposedly a constitutional law professor. Yeah, right. Cruz actually knows constitutional law. He is a constitutionalist in the pure mold, and he will not take any guff from the Republican establishment any more than he will from Harry Reid and that bunch of bums over there. He stands for the Constitution, and when that boils down to is that he stands for us. And as I've told you before, I make no bones about it. I'm a cruiser. I believe, Glenn Beck first said it, but I will echo Glenn Beck. I believe that Ted Cruz is the conservative constitutional Republican that we conservative constitutional Republicans have been praying for years. I think he is in essence, he is the answer to that prayer. Is he perfect? Heavens, no, he's not perfect. He has his faults. He's a man. He's a human being, which I'm sure is why he has Christ in his life. We all need that, and he makes no bones about it. I've heard it said that he wears his Christianity on his sleeve. I haven't seen that, but I have seen him stand up for the gospel, and I have seen him praise Jesus as the living, risen Christ. That's a good thing for guys like me. We just celebrated the risen Christ this past Sunday. At our church, we have something we do, and when we greet each other on Sunday, we say, "He is risen. He is risen indeed. Hallelujah. Amen." And boy, you can hear that all over the church as part of the church service. It is really, there's something very, very special about Easter, and you have your own way of looking at it. But going back to Ted, I think he's the real deal. Donald Trump is just a showboater. There's nothing, he's an empty suit, a very expensive suit. Have you ever noticed the man doesn't even button his jacket? He always looks like an unmade bed. With his kind of money, you'd think the least he'd do is button his jacket. Maybe he thinks that makes him look more working class. I don't know. All right, so enough of that. So anyway, the establishment is scared to death. They don't want Trump, even though, and it's interesting to hear these so-called Republicans when they're asked pointedly on television, well, if Trump is the nominee, will you vote for him? And boy, they start backpedaling, they start hedging their bets. Some of them have just plain said no, they won't vote at all. What kind of a Republican is that? I mean, let's face it now. We, as I shared with you before, when McCain was up for election, I voted for. It starts with an S, and I just drew a blank on it. But at any rate, I certainly didn't want McCain. He's not a Republican. He's in name only. Is he a genuine war hero? He's the real deal. And I give him absolute respect and honor for what he did as a naval officer, the courage and the commitment he had. But somewhere his cheese has slipped off the cracker, and I don't know where it was. But so I couldn't even hold my nose and vote for him. I voted for one of the other candidates that was on there, Santorum. That was the Santorum that I voted for. When Dole was another. He fought in the Second War. That's why he has that one messed up arm. He was wounded. He's got the Purple Heart. Any man or woman who has a Purple Heart has my respect. And he was the real deal as a young officer in the Second War. But here again, I think his cheese slipped off the cracker too. So I voted for one of the other people in opposition to him. The Republican who says, I'm not going to vote at all, is just throwing his vote to Hillary. And you know that she's going to get it over Sanders. Heaven help us. Hillary will be Barack Hussein on steroids as far as left-wing progressive destruction of our way of life. The woman is in it for one thing only, and that's her. That's all she's ever been for. Her alliance with Bill has always been about her, and his was about him, and about their. If you watch House of Cards, one of my favorite programs, if you watch House of Cards, you can see the Bill and Hillary team in there. You can see so many of these sleazeballs that we've seen in that program. It's a marvelous program. And you have to say, that's probably what's really going on in Washington, what's going on there. Well, I've really got off on a thing here. But now, unlike the Inquirer, the Globe, by golly, if you're getting the Globe, you're getting the straight scoop. And now, this is not a recent one, but you see that picture on the front? Let's see, this Globe goes back to, see if I can even find a date on this. They hid the date somewhere in here. This is an older Globe, September of 2010. So this has been around for a while. 2010, remember? Let's see, 2010. Oh, yeah, that's when Hussein was put into the White House, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, this is a picture of him on the front here in his Muslim garb. And he's not an 8-year-old kid. He's a teenager from the looks of it, at the very least, maybe older. And I have said for a long time that I believed he was a Muslim. I believe in his heart he's a Muslim to this day. I don't care about him going to the Church of GD, the so-called Reverend Wright, that piece of work. There's an interesting thing. I've shared this with you before in Islam. It's called taqiyya, and I've shared with you. Taqiyya is actually in the Qur'an, and it is where in the Qur'an it teaches Muslims to protect themselves. As long as their heart is true to Allah, they can do almost anything. And taqiyya is a very big part of it. Taqiyya means to cover, conceal, deceive, lie. And it is in, now where do you find in the Bible where it tells you to lie? I've never read it. And if I did, I apparently didn't understand it. But in the Quran, Muslims are told that they can and they should lie in order to protect themselves if they're outnumbered, or to conceal something they're doing to overthrow a government, whatever it is. Remember that the end game for Islam is the overthrow of all government except Islam. That's the end game. The end game is Allah, through his messenger Muhammad, rules the world. That's the end game. Nobody else is allowed to have anything else except they must submit Islam or they must die. If they're lucky, they can live for up to 10 years as a dhimmi. A dhimmi is a little more than a slave, really. Dhimmi has absolutely no rights, and they still have to pay a tax, the jizya. So anyway, I believe that whenever Hussein is talking about the fact he's saying he's not a Muslim, I believe he's invoking taqiyya. He's covering up, because in his heart he is a Muslim. There is not, the old expression, if he walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and is always seen in the company of ducks, maybe it's a duck. Hussein is a duck, or more accurately, a Muslim. But he can declare himself as being a Christian, because let's face it, in this nation, even with the huge secularization that's happening through the universities and all that, we are still a predominantly Judeo-Christian nation. And some 80 plus percentage of Americans still consider themselves to be Christians, even if they're not practicing their Christianity. So it behooves a Muslim that isn't ready to die right away to practice taqiyya and to lie, as I believe Hussein has been doing since day one. All right, so I told you that I was going to, let's get caught up a little bit. Now, I spoke to you last week about an article that was in the Idaho State Journal, and this goes back to March 8th. And this is where local Muslims were concerned because there was a bill being pushed forward, and I don't know if it's been signed yet. I think it has gone forward. I'm not sure. I didn't find out before we started the show today. But there was a bill being put forward, and basically the bill is trying to assure and to make certain that Sharia can in no way, shape, or form be practiced legally in this state in preference to constitutional, whether it's federal constitution or state constitution. It cannot be replaced by Sharia. And I shared with you before that every time a college university sets aside a foot washing bath for Muslims, they have just complied with Sharia. Every time a hospital sets aside an area that is only for Muslim women and only Muslim women nurses or doctors can work on them, they have already complied with Sharia. Every time a school talks to the local imam and has the imam bless the books about whatever, history or whatever, they are already complying with Sharia. It's creeping Sharia, and people don't even realize it's coming at them, but it's there. And so I try to enlighten you as to what Sharia is, and it's a very serious thing. There are places in, I think it's in Florida and Louisiana perhaps, where Sharia is actually being allowed by local magistrates when it comes to matters of divorce and property settlement. The minute the camel's nose is under the tent flap, you've got a problem. You have got to punch that nose and get that camel out from there as quickly as possible. So some people in this state and good Republicans north of here, you're not going to find any of those here in this county, but good Republicans north of here have put forth legislation to make sure that Sharia cannot be implemented in any way, shape, or form contrary to, in preference to constitutional law. And remember, in Sharia, there is no First Amendment. It doesn't exist. You cannot argue with Sharia. Under the Constitution, the First Amendment gives you freedom of speech. You can call the president a bum, just as I do on a regular basis. You're allowed to do that. Not in Sharia. Sharia, you lose your head. You aren't allowed, because Sharia is also religious law. It's all encompassing. Well, anyway, so here's the article. If you read it, bear with me. If you didn't, because it's a little outdated now, but it's interesting to see who the players are. This is by Mike O'Donnell, and this was March 8th, and I quote, "Last week, a committee in the Idaho legislature agreed to introduce a bill designed to keep Sharia law and other foreign codes from becoming part of Idaho court decisions or government policies. An Idaho State University instructor and a Pocatello doctor, both Muslims, have reservations about such legislation. The bill was sponsored by Representative Eric Redmond, a Republican from Athol, and it passed the House Ways and Means Committee on a partisan vote, with the 3 Democrats on the committee voting not to move the bill forward, of course. The Associated Press said Redmond's bill must now be directed to a legislative panel for a hearing to move forward in the 2016 session. I think the session just ended, and so I don't know where this went. Pocatello Dr. Fahim Rahim, a recipient of the Ellis Island Medal of Honor, said state laws should not be considered if they damage the U.S. Constitution guarantees of freedom of religion. Well, and this is a trick. It's almost like the trick question you get in your college exams, because Islam is always portrayed as being just another religion, but it is not, as I've shared with you before. The Qur'an, which is the anchor to the Islam, is only 14% of the overall thing. Islam is an entire package. It is everything from how to stir the soup to how to finance your car. It is the entire package. It is their law. It is based on the Quran, backed up by the Hadiths and the Sharia. This is a red herring when I see Dr. Rahim saying something like this. Should not be considered if they damage the U.S. Constitution's guarantees of freedom of religion. And they always tag it onto religion because the Muslims are very well aware that in our country we place a high standard on freedom of religion. But Islam is not just religion. Quoting, "We live in the United States of America, and that has a constitution that has to be abided by," Rahim says. "Bills based on fear shouldn't impact these freedoms." Now you see how cleverly that's put together there? If we didn't know what Islam was, and if we just thought that it was a religion, then this sounds very straightforward and legitimate. But we know that Islam is much more than just a religion. Rahim also said no foreign laws or religious laws should erode the freedoms granted by the U.S. Constitution or the laws in this country. That I like, and I agree with him entirely. And Sharia is a foreign law. It is foreign. It is completely antithetical to everything in our Judeo-Christian laws, which is the basis for our constitutional law. Instructor at ISU's Intensive English Institute, Aza Abugarsa, said any laws regarding religion in this country need to be applied equally. And there's that old thing again. It's a charade, or charade, if you will. They make it sound like they're only talking about religion. Islam is not just about religion. Abu Garza has been a Muslim American for 8 years and said she has never personally experienced discrimination because of her faith. Quoting her, if this law, the Idaho House bill, is applied to all other religions, it's okay, she said. If it's only applied to Islam, that's not okay. And there's where the rub is, because Islam doesn't stop with just the Qur'an, although the Qur'an stops everything else. If you haven't already got yourself a copy of it, I strongly urge you to get a copy of the Qur'an. I got mine on the secondary market. I wasn't about to pay somebody in Saudi Arabia to have their book. You can probably get it for free. One of the best English translations of the Qur'an is put out by Penguin Classics, and it's a revised translation by N.J. Dawood. This is considered to be one of the better translations of the Qur'an, and it's a little easier to read, but I assure you, reading the Qur'an is not like reading the Holy Bible. It is confusing, contradictory, it is a difficult read, and you go away with it and you say, well, now what did that actually say? Well, they have all manner of ways to make sure that you get the message, and Sharia will tell you what it actually says. You need to read the Qur'an and understand why when the Muslims start grousing about, well, they're picking on us because of our religion. Their religion is not like what you and I think of as a religion. If you're a Methodist or a Mormon or a Catholic, pardon me, your religion is just that. It is your religion. It is not all-encompassing the state and finance and all that. We could get into a lot of nitpicking here, but they're antithetical one to the other. But they always use this, even in new Muslims. Apparently she's only been a Muslim for 8 years, according to this. Redmond's bill doesn't specifically mention Islamic law, but the Associated Press reported that Redmond circulated pictures of a severed hand and a man about to be beheaded to legislative leaders considering the proposal. The pictures were pasted in between definitions of Sharia law and accused the Prophet Muhammad of being a pedophile. Well, as I shared with you last week, Muhammad was a pedophile. And I remind you of the one glaring entry to that remark was the wife he loved most, or his favorite wife, Aisha, whom he married when she was 6, but he didn't consummate till she was 9. That's a pedophile, folks. And moms, dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever you are, do you want your 9-year-old deflowered by some 50-year-old pervert? I don't think so. That's a pedophile, any way you cut it. This bill isn't just about Sharia law, but Sharia law is a major concern, Redmond told the AP, and he's absolutely correct. Abu Garza received her doctorate from Oklahoma State University. Oklahoma was one of the first states to pass anti-Sharia legislation that specifically targeted Islamic law, Sharia. The Oklahoma law was immediately challenged by the Council for American Islamic Relations and the American Civil Liberties Union. Two strangers in the same bedfellows. CARE, the Council for American Islamic Relations, has been cited by the U.S. government as supporting terrorist organizations. CARE is the major mouthpiece for all things Arab and or Muslim, but they are not. They are well funded. The Saudis, Kuwaitis, the rest of them take care of CARE. They're well funded, but they are not an American organization. They're under our flag, but they are here for the purpose of defending the Muslims so they can destroy the nation. I know that's strong language, but that's the bottom line. And I don't have to tell you about the ACLU, sometimes known as the Anti-Christian Lawyers Union. ACLU, so-called American Civil Liberties Union, they're always going to be going toward the left or the progressive issues. The Federal 10th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled the Oklahoma law unconstitutional in 2010. The 10th Circuit used to be the most reliably conservative circuit court in the nation, and so the leftists went after the circuit court to dilute it, and it is now no longer a reliable constitutional conservative court. In its decision, the court wrote, quote, "Appellants do not identify any actual problem the challenged amendment seeks to solve. Indeed, they admitted that they did not know of even a single instance where an Oklahoma court had applied Sharia law or used the legal precepts of other nations or cultures, let alone that such applications or uses had resulted in concrete problems in Oklahoma. The Associated Press reported that to date, there have been no known cases in which an Idaho judge based a ruling on foreign or Islamic law. And to my knowledge, that's true. But that's the way it's always, they're always about parsing words. They always give you lawyer talk. Lawyers rarely use a definite article. They usually will say, appears to be, seems to be, could be. You know, they don't ever want to get tied up with an actual fact. Quoting, attempts to prevent courts from considering international or foreign law suffer from constitutional flaws and undermine the ability of courts to interpret laws and treaties regarding global businesses, international human rights, and family law issues such as international marriages and adoptions, the ACLU website states. The ACLU, as is the case with the 3 women justices on the Supreme Court, are all very much in favor of using foreign law to supplement American law or to interpret constitutional law. They're all for it. For them, the Constitution is evolving. For those of us who are, for lack of a better term, more purists, the Constitution is not evolving. It is perfect prima facie. It does not need to evolve. Under a link labeled Islamophobia, the Islamic Society of Southeast Idaho website has posted information about similar anti-Sharia law legislation. The Society established a new mosque in Pocatello in 2014, a dark day in this community. Sharia is basically Islamic law and is the guiding rules and regulations to Muslims who practice their religion. Now that's key. If you are a law-abiding Muslim who practice your religion, the religion of Islam based upon the Qur'an, all right, Sharia is the law. It tells you exactly how to interpret what's going on in the Qur'an. It supports the Quranic law. So Sharia is indeed the rule that all practicing Muslims are supposed to live by. Sharia says that there is no other law, and let's see if I can find this quickly in this book on let's see, Sharia. Sharia says that let's see here. Okay, Islam is not just a religion. It is a complete civilization with detailed political system, religion, and a legal code, the Sharia. Muhammad preached the religion of Islam for 13 years in Mecca and got 150 Arabs to convert to Islam. He went to Medina and became a politician and warlord. After 2 years in Medina, every Jew was murdered, enslaved, or exiled. He was involved in an event of violence on the average of every 6 weeks for the last 9 years of his life. Muhammad died without a single enemy left standing. Well, that wasn't the part that I was looking for. Let's see. When faced with unpleasant verses from the Quran, it is commonly said that the true meaning depends upon how one interprets the text. For over 1,000 years, the Sharia has been the official and normative interpretation for all of Islam. Sharia is the Quran and Sunnah, that's the life of Muhammad, interpreted by Islam's finest scholars. There is no need to look further for interpretation. That work has been done for 1,000 years. New matters in Islam must be evaluated and judged according to Sharia, the final and universal moral code for all humanity until the end of time. The Muslims, the Muslim scholars, now your average Muslim isn't going to necessarily know all these things, depending on their degree of education, how well read they were, whether in this country or in another one. These are the scholars that are saying this. But according to the Sharia, the Constitution is a temporary law made by man, and therefore it has to go away. The Sharia is the perfect, all-encompassing law from Allah through His Prophet Muhammad. That's the way they view it. And so anytime you hear them saying, well, we just want freedom of religion, you have to realize what they're up to. Sharia is their guidepost, it is their yardstick, it is their benchmark, however you want to say it. But according to them, Sharia is the only true law, and it is forever, whereas our constitutional Republican form of law is only temporary. That's important to remember because they are convinced that they are going to do away with us and our constitutional law, and is going to be replaced by Sharia. Okay, Sharia is basically Islamic law and is the guiding rules and regulations to Muslims who practice their religion, the website states. Forbidding Sharia to Muslims would be similar to forbidding Jewish law to Jews. Not even similar. Not even similar. Jewish law does not seek to suborn the Constitution in this country. Jewish law is a religious law within the community. It does not say that it's superior to the Constitution. It does not say that the Constitution has to go away. Sharia does. The site says 109 similar bills have been introduced in 32 states since 2010. So, all right, so the Rahim brothers, local medical doctors of good repute who do good work, spend a lot of money doing good things, they're concerned, as is Dr. Hummel, chief Muslim apologist, so to speak, who is a professor of social studies at the university, and this Azza, what's her name? Azza or Eza, well, whatever. I believe she teaches English at the university. So now we have 2 Muslims on staff at the university, 2 that we know of. Who knows if there are others? March 20th, Dick Elliott. Dick is a friend of mine. I know him well. Lives just down the street from me, actually. And he and I have been discussing Islam for some time now, and I've been sharing with him whatever I could to help enlighten him. He certainly didn't need my help, but he was glad to have the information. He's an intelligent man. He is well educated, and he has the fire in the belly. He gets worked up about some things. Well, he wrote a letter to the editor on March the 20th, and I'll read it to you as it appeared. I have noted with great interest that the Idaho State Legislature has passed a bill that will hopefully restrict any sort of foreign laws or any sort of foreign customs that might be deemed as illegal behavior from being used in any Idaho court proceeding. I have also noted that several members of the Islamic community in Pocatello have spoken out against the passage of this bill. I can only assume that since our state and our country are so tremendously weak, that in order to show our very stupid political correctness, we will in some way, shape, or form give in to those folks that don't want to adhere to anything that might restrict or constrict their anti-American beliefs. And Sharia is anti-American. Doesn't have to say it specifically, just read it for yourself. In so many, many other incidences having anything at all to do with Islamic faith issues, everyone in this country has gone way overboard in order to accommodate and appease these folks, meaning the Muslims. Please bear in mind, these same folks worship from a book of directives, the Qur'an, that very clearly instructs them, quote, "If you cannot convert the infidels, then kill them. So saith the book of directives of the religion of peace." Please bear in mind, those that follow the teachings and directives of this group, Islam, have some very, very strange customs as to how they treat the female members of their society. Please bear in mind, this is the same group of people that have made numerous unprovoked warlike attacks against innocent people all over the world for the past 2,000 or 3,000 years. Well, he's a little bit off there. It's been 1,400 years. But since the very inception of Islam to today, it has always been a religion of war, of murder. It has never been a religion of peace. The only peace that you will ever find under Islam is when they have subjugated a people and they have enslaved them so that they can't resist. Then you find peace. There is no other peace in Islam. As a refresher, one might want to spend a few precious moments doing a little research as to what sort of mayhem and destruction the followers of the Islamic faith have perpetrated on those around the world that do not follow or believe in their faith. The list of acts is long and disgusting. I find it very interesting that in the Idaho State Journal of Wednesday, March 9th, 2016, there's an article stating the CARE, that's the Council of American Islamic Relations, the CARE group has asked the Idaho legislature to stop this law from becoming a part of the laws of the state of Idaho, to stop the anti-Islam law. Like we, the residents of the state of Idaho, really care what the members of CARE think? I certainly do not. However, unfortunately, in order to be politically correct and not offend any of those around us, our legislatures will probably cave in to this very, very small but very, very vocal community. In the same way, in this very same issue of the Idaho State Journal, in the box labeled "The Day in History," There's an interesting tidbit stating that on March 9th, 1977, quote, about a dozen armed Hanafi Muslims invaded 3 buildings in Washington, D.C., killing 1 and taking more than 130 hostages. The siege ended 2 days later. I really wonder what CARE had to say about that incident. I really would like to know the details of how many Islamic groups came out to protest this action by their brothers. It seems very, very strange to me that with all of the unrest going on throughout much of the Middle East and centered primarily in countries dominated by the Islamic religion, that we never read in the papers or hear on the TV news how numerous Islamic groups are speaking out against their troublemaking brothers. Why is this? They will not speak out against their fellow believers, yet they are so quick to speak out against we non-believers when we attempt to enact bills, laws, or statutes to protect us from falling prey to their strange laws and ways of life. Maybe it's just me, but I strongly feel that if you were not happy where you came from, why in the world would you want to go somewhere else and then try to change that place to be like the place you came from? It just does not make sense to me. Well, now Dick Elliott was born in Omaha, Nebraska, and now resides in Pocatello. He is a retired, successful businessman, and Dick is still learning about Islam, but he's getting the picture. And many of us have probably asked the same thing. Well, if you don't like it here, why come here? And if you came here to escape from all that horror that's going on over there, don't bring it over here. We don't want it. Why would you come here to escape Sharia and then want it implemented here, where you have freedoms? It kind of defies common thinking. This is from the March 25th Idaho State Journal, an article by Cindy McFarland. On Tuesday, Senate Bill 1342, which would allow the Bible to be used as a reference in Idaho public schools, made it to Governor C.L. Buschauder's desk after passing in both the state and the House and the state. This is despite the fact that Attorney General Lawrence Wasden said the law goes against the Idaho State Constitution, which states, quoting, "No books, papers, tracts, or documents of a political, sectarian, or denominational charter shall be used." Well, I think the good Wasden's a little confused on what he's citing as his reason there. But at the same time, a bill prohibiting Sharia law from influencing the Idaho court system is still awaiting a vote in the State House. Despite the fact that this hasn't been an issue in U.S. courts, many states have passed similar legislation. Language in the bill doesn't mention the Islamic law by name, but instead bans government courts from basing rulings on foreign laws. However, according to the Spokesman Review, Republican representatives said Islamic law was a major factor when they were drafting this piece of legislation. In Senate Bill 1342, however, the Bible is mentioned specifically. That is, despite an effort by Democrats, it's always the same people, to change it to include all religious texts. According to the Spokesman Review, Republican Representative Sage Dixon, the bill's sponsor, said they singled out the Bible because it is under attack. Dixon and other backers of the bill has argued that the Bible is non-sectarian, which it is, and non-denominational, which it is, because many religions refer back to the Bible and its tenets. And in fact, much of what Muhammad said he received from Allah was actually stolen from the Tanakh, the five Bibles of the Jewish faith. They are the Pentateuch, the first 5 Bibles or 5 books of the Bible, and from the Gospels and so on. There was a great deal of plagiarism, twisting, distorting, and plain theft that Muhammad, when he was being enlightened, that he took from the Jews and from the Christians when he perverted it into this satanic thing that he named as Islam. According to Asa Abu Garsa, the vice president of the Islamic Society, this is one of the teachers at the University of Southeastern Idaho, these bills end up contradicting each other. The Bible and the Qur'an have a lot in common, said Abu Garsa. Now that's just an outfaced, bold lie. That's one of the common apologies that are the people who are trying to shove this down our neck will often tell you, well, they're almost the same. They are not. The differences couldn't be more stark. There are parts of the Quran that sound almost like the Bible because they were stolen from the Bible and then perverted to fit Muhammad's own twisted way of looking at things. By adding the Bible, you're highlighting things that are in Sharia law. Really? You mean like freedom of speech? Like not beating your wife? Like no pedophiling? No adultery? No polygamy? You mean like that? Those are the similarities, Professor? Abergasu, who is looking to start a class at the Pocatello Mosque to teach young Muslims about their religion, including Sharia law, said it's best to keep religions out of the schools in general. So if they can't have their Sharia, if they can't have their Quran in the schools, then they don't want any Christian or Jewish stuff in there, even though our nation is founded on those things, and this whole Islam is a foreigner to our shores, and it is antithetical to all of our previous beliefs as a nation. There are Christian schools and churches, so people have the choice to send their children to specific religious schools, she said. I think that serves the purpose more than putting religion into all the schools. And they're not talking about putting religion into all the schools, talking about using the Bible as a reference. Roger Bray, city councilman and pastor at Central Christian Church in Pocatello, said the whole idea seems like a double standard. Well, it would to him. His thinking is always double. I think it is election year grandstanding, said Bray in reference to the Sharia law bill. We don't use Sharia law, but they could use the same religious convictions to do so. Bray said the Bible does have a place in schools as a part of literature, history, and religious studies, but its application is fairly limited. The Bible wasn't written to be a science book, said Bray. What Bible would you even use? We can't even agree on that in the churches. How are we supposed to decide in the classroom? There's a story that I heard, and it's only hearsay, about Bray and his form of Christianity and the way he treats the Bible. Since I can't prove it, it's only hearsay, came from a source that I give a great deal of credibility to, but it would seem to say that Roger Bray's outlook on the Bible is perhaps somewhat different from other standard Christian beliefs. Well, there's always so much to cover and so little time to cover it. The teacher in me comes out and I start talking way beyond what I should. I would still tell you that if you can, go to the internet and get this little booklet. There are 3 of them. They're as part of a series, The Life of Muhammad, the Sirah, by Bill Warner, Sharia Law for Non-Muslims, the Hadith, the Sunnah of Muhammad. God bless you and yours. Thank you for joining us. Pray for our nation. Pray for Israel. Pray for your family. God bless you. Good night.